Okay, hello, this is Palta's Error Instruments, and we have another DIY kit here. It's something special. It's actually a drone, and most of the time it's just a drone. Sometimes people think drones are really boring because there only is one sound, but a good drone is all you need. Sometimes a drone is more than enough. And in a lot of cultures, they're making drones with, with other equipment, and like a kind of sitars and different things. But we make it this time with an oscillator by name the hex inverter. Sometimes it's a kind of a chip that that you can use for a lot of different purpose. The chip has 6 oscillators, and we're gonna use all 6 of them. 2 of them gonna be used as an LFO to modulate the other 4. And we're gonna do this with LDRs, light sensitive sensors. Sounds complex, it's not so difficult. We have Avi here down here, and she's gonna show you step by step how to make this wonderful drone to get some cloudy sounds. And okay, hello Avi.
Hello everybody. Okay, so today we're gonna build this PCB that we have here. We already put in the LDRs and the LEDs, but I will still explain when normally you would do this and what they will do. And we're gonna use the manual that I have here, and it has a BOM bill of materials here, this list. And the actual best order to put all the parts in is the order in which this list is written. So if you just put your list with you or follow my steps, then we will have the right order for this PCB. So you can see on the list the first component is called the 1N41100. 4001, sorry. And it's a power diode. This is very important to protect the circuit, and I have it here. This diode has a small grayish, whitish line on one side of the body part, and this line is also on the board. We have the component here, D1 it is called, and on the board you will see on one side there's the white line. So we bend the legs of the diode like this, and we put the white line on the side of the PCB where it's also on that side. So I hope you can see it. Yes. This is important. If it's not the right way, the board will not turn on and not do anything. It will not damage it, but it's just not gonna work, and then you have to flip it later. So let's just do it right now. Okay, next part is the resistor. We have 7 resistors, and they're all 2K ohm. And there's only one resistor type in this whole kit, so you can just take all the resistors that you have out of your bag, and we will place them. Here are 3, here are 3, and there's 1 over here. So just bend the legs as tight as possible and put in all 7 resistors. I find it very useful to keep this board on, like balance it on something or keep it like in, I have this box, so you can just put in all the components without bending the legs. But if you don't have this, you can put in some components like this and take your board, put your finger on it, and then bend the legs like this. So now it stays if I flip it for soldering later. So we can also do this with the diode. And it depends on your soldering style, how you want to do this. But just make sure the parts don't fall out when you flip it. So we put all 7 resistors. We have some nice piano music in the background for relaxing. Okay, now we have all resistors. For me, I'm not gonna bend the legs on the other side because I know they're staying like this, but you can do that. So let's just do, okay, now we can do soldering right now. This is all the flattest components are the diode and the resistors. So make sure no parts fall out when you flip it, and then we can do some soldering. So heat up your soldering iron, clean your tip with a dirty sponge, and let's solder these parts. We don't need to use a lot of tin, but not too much, but also not too little. So if you don't know how to solder, I recommend that you look it up first. It's very easy, everyone can do it if you have the right equipment. So all the legs that are sticking out on the back, I just soldered. So this is the 7 resistors and the diode, and then it looks like this. And then you can take your clipper or whatever you use to cut off the legs, and then cut off the legs. I will do this reversed, otherwise they are flying everywhere. So now all the legs are cut off and we have our first components soldered onto the board. Okay, next on the list we have the 1 UF, it says, but it's Microfarad Polarized Capacitor, and we have 4 of those. There's two values of capacitors in the bag of components, so make sure you get all the 1 UF ones, and I don't know if you can see it, but the value is written on the component. So this is 1 UF, this is 1 UF, this is 1, and this is 100. We can save it for later. 1, and then this is 100. So we have 2 capacitors that are 100 microfarads, and we have 4 that are 1. And all polarized capacitors that look like this have 1 long leg. I don't know if you can see it, but 1 leg is long and 1 leg is short, and the long leg is the positive side, the short leg is the negative side. This also is marked by a white line on the short leg, and all polarized capacitors have a plus written on the PCB, on the place where it goes into the PCB. So let's see where these components go in. It's C7 to 10, so that's C7 is right here, C8 is here, C9 is there, and C10 is there, and they all have a plus. So we're just gonna put the long leg in the plus hole, and this will make sure that the polarity is right. Next one, also long leg into the hole with the plus. All the positive holes are on the left side on this board, so just make sure all the long legs are on the left side. And the last one. So that's all the 1 microfarad capacitors. And then we can go to the 100 microfarad capacitor that we just put aside, and they also have exactly the same design. 1 leg is long, 1 leg is short, and also just like the 1 microfarad capacitors, the positive hole is on the left, so just put them in the same way as the other ones. And then we have 6 polarized capacitors on the board, and I think we can just solder them. So put your hand on the board, flip it, bend all the legs like this, and then you can make sure that they're not falling out, and we put it down and solder all the legs. These are actually quite small, so make sure that they are not connecting in the middle, the 2 pads, because this is a short in the circuit. Just use your eyes and check that the 2 pads of each capacitor are not touching. And the last one like this. Okay, that was easy. Now all these legs are soldered onto the board, and you can always check if everything is correct. The solder has to be in a bit, like it has to be a mountain shape-ish, but it shouldn't be circular. If it's like a blob on there, then you have to just put the iron on it again until it flattens out into this mountain shape. Okay, let's cut the legs. I will do this behind the screen. Okay, so let's go to the next part on the list, which is also a capacitor, but this is not a polarized capacitor. The value of this capacitor is 100 nanofarad, but the code that they print on the capacitor is 104, and I don't think you will be able to read it, but we only have 4 of this, and these are all the same value, so it shouldn't matter. So we have 4 of this capacitor, and they go into place C1, C2, C3 and C6, and those are over here, here, here and here, and I will just put them in so you can see where they are. There goes 1, 2, 3 and 4. So then again we can flip the board. It's only 4 parts, but we can just solder it so we don't mix something up. And again I flipped it and bent the legs outward so we can solder them. And this is the same process as before. Like this. And the board looks like this right now, and the other side is like this. And let's just cut off these legs again. Yes, yes, yes. So the cool thing about this board actually is that all parts have a very distinct function, and it's a good board to teach people what certain parts like capacitors and resistors can do. For example, the capacitors on this board, all the big black polarized capacitors are all pitch capacitors, so they will determine the speed of the 4 oscillators and the 2 LFOs. And all the yellow capacitors, the non-polarized capacitors, are filtering capacitors, so this is a different function of the same part, and this will filter the sound so it will sound nice and round in the end. Okay, so it's good to know and learn about the components while you're soldering. And let's go to the next part. And this is the chip header, DIL 14. It says that means it has 14 legs. You can find this in your bag. It's a part that will be soldered onto the board, and the chip will be put in there because the chip is sensitive to heat, but this plastic part is not sensitive to heat. So this is the part we solder, and the chip just clicks in. And this part actually has one side that has a small circle cut out of the plastic. This is not on this side, but only on one side. And this is also marked on the PCB with the same half circle cut out, and this shows you how the part should fit into the board. So the circle cut out is actually facing that way in this case, and we can just put it in there. And this is a bit harder to solder, but if you put your finger on it and you can push the legs a tiny bit outward, but make sure you don't cut yourself because the legs can be sharp, but just a tiny bit so it will hang in the place, and then we can solder it again. Like that. Don't use too much tin, but actually it doesn't really matter as long as it's all the legs are connecting and it looks fine to you, then it probably is fine. But if you can see that there's just not enough tin on some of the legs, you can just put a little extra, make sure everything is connected right. So now we have this part soldered onto the board, and let's just put the chip in there right away, otherwise maybe we forget it. So the chip comes in the kit, and the chip is called CD40106, and just like we said in the intro, this is a hex inverter chip with 6 oscillators, and it's an awesome chip. You can do a lot with it, and on this board we try to use it as a variety as possible. So this chip, always the legs are always a little bit too much sticking out, so what I usually do is press down a little bit so the legs are more straight, otherwise it doesn't fit into the component right away. So now the legs are more like this, and first they were a bit like this. And just like on the header, we also have this circle cut out on one side, and this will show you, just like the header, how this goes into the PCB.
The mouth to the mouth.
Yeah, the mouth fits to the mouth. So make sure the circle cutout is facing that way, and gently press the chip into the header. Well, just like this. Look at that. This part is already almost finished, and yeah, looks good. Well, normally we would solder the LDRs, the light dependent resistors, and the LEDs right now, and I can show you what the LDR looks like before soldering. This is the component that we're talking about. It has 2 legs, and this part is light sensitive resistance, so the more light shines onto this side of the component, the less the resistance is gonna be. So if you put your finger all over it so it's completely dark, there's going to be a lot of resistance, but if you shine a flashlight into it, there's going to be only a little resistance. And on this board we use this part 5 times, here, 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 and here. And this part will help us convert voltage into resistance, because the LEDs, they will blink, and this is based on a voltage. So if the voltage is high, the LED will shine a red light, and if the voltage is low, the LED will be dark. And this is based on the LFOs that are here, so the light will go on and off and on and off in a certain speed. And this, we want to use this as a resistance for the potentiometers of the pitch of the drone. So this part will help us convert a voltage from the LED into a resistance, because the light will trigger a difference in the resistance. So bright, the resistance will be low, and dark, the resistance will be high. So this is perfect for our case. This is actually the way a Vactrol works, and many people will know this component, but also many people do not know this component. It's very useful. We use this here in the middle of the PCB is actually an open style Vactrol, and then here is a sort of double style open Vactrol, and here again. So normally we would put 4 LDRs here and 1 here. They're already in this board, but I will show you how to bend them. For these 4, you can just put your thumb a couple millimeters from the base of the component and then push it into a 90-degree angle, so you get this, and then you can just put it here in place and solder it a little bit. I will show you. It's a little bit higher from the board, so you have a straight angle and it's looking at the LED. And yeah, we can do this for all 4. You can just bend them all the same. If you want them different, that's fine, but this is the way we would recommend, because it has the best look at the light. And then we have another LDR here in the middle, and this will be bent a little bit different. This one, you just take the face of the LDR and bend it as tight as possible, so you get this shape for the LDR. So this will make sure the LDR in the middle is actually like as close to the LED as possible, because this Vactrol LDR combination will be closing and opening the gate of the panel, so this has to be very tight, and these can be a bit more open because this is for the pitch. Okay, well, and yeah, also we have the LED, of course, so this comes in combination with the LDR, and there's 3 of them. Yeah, the LED has a polarity, so it matters which way around you put it in the 2 holes. And this also has 1 long leg, 1 short leg, and the long leg is plus, so the positive side is the long leg. And this is also marked with a small plus on the PCB 3 times. Also the plus is on the left here, so same as the capacitors. Then we just put this in, solder it just like I did before with the other components, and in the end it will look like this, or it should look something like this. Okay, so you have something to add?
Yeah, there's no plus and minus of this one, so you can put them just in there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, just same length legs.
Yeah. So yeah, people don't have to look for that. The switches.
Yeah, that's next on the list is the potentiometers, but it doesn't really matter from this point. So we come to this part of the list now with the lines around it. And this is all the bigger components of this kit. And this is the potentiometers, so you can take them out. 6 potentiometers you have to get. 4, 5, 6. And 2 mono Tonkicon jacks. Take them out of your bag. Let's see, the Momentary push buttons, they look like this. We have 5 of them, so take them all out. This, and this. And the DC connector, which is this part, also take it out. This is the 4 parts that we're gonna do next, and these parts we're gonna put in the PCB, but we're not gonna solder them yet. Actually, first we can put in the spacers, because this is more useful so that everything doesn't fall out. Oh, I have them here. Also included in your kit are some screws, so take out 4 of the screws and 4 10mm spacers. These are metal ones, but they can also be plastic sometimes, then they're black. So we're gonna put these spacers in first, so this will help us place the front panel onto this instrument later. So we have 4 holes here in each corner, and just gonna take a screw, put it from below to above to the PCB, and then take one of the spacers, and usually you can just do this by hand and screw them on like this. And let's do this for all 4 corners. This doesn't have to be like super tight or anything, just make sure they're hand tight like this. And then we can place these parts next. Let's just start with the potentiometers. These are 100K. Usually they fit right away, but if they don't, you have to push these bigger legs a little bit in, so they're a little bit less sticking out. And then these are all the potentiometers on the board. They're all the same value, so you don't have to check this. Just put 6 ones in the 6 places. And it usually clicks a little bit, sometimes it doesn't if it's bent a bit, the whole part. But if it clicks, at least you know it's in there the right way. More. So like this. So you can just make sure they're all pushed down all the way. And with the front panel we're gonna check if they're straight, so just make sure they're in all the way, and then we're gonna check if they're straight later. And next on the list we're gonna put in the tiny push buttons. These have 5 places on the board and they're all the same, so I'll show you how to put in one. It has, you cannot put it in one way and you can put it in the other way, so just check which way it goes. It doesn't matter if you flip it or anything, but it should fit. If you have to force it, then you're probably doing it wrong. So these will also click a little bit into the panel, and just push them down all the way. Sometimes the legs can be a little bit bent, especially if they come out of a bag. Yes, and the fifth one goes here. And these switches will later in the instrument, they will open the modulation of the LFOs to the voice of the oscillator. So they're very useful and nice. And we need 5 of them. If they're all in there, then you're doing it right. Okay, next is the Donkey Kong 3.5mm mono jacks. We have 2 of them. They only fit in one way, so I will just do that. And also show you, make sure they're pushed down all the way, and this is good. And then the last is the DC connector. This is actually the most annoying part ever, because this is the only part where the long leg is actually the minus, not the plus. So this long leg is minus, and on the board right here is where it goes. You can see a plus and a minus above the holes. So the long leg will go into the plus, into the minus, sorry. This is why it's so annoying. I will just show you like this. Long leg into minus. Yes? So if you do this wrong, again, the board will not turn on, you will not burn anything, but it will just not work. So be careful that you do this right. Okay, now all these parts are in there. They're not soldered, but they are in the board, in the right places. And now we can take our front panel from the kit and just place it facing this way onto your instrument. Like this. And look at that, it fits perfectly. And this will help us make sure all these parts, the potentiometers, these tiny switches, the jacks, and this DC connector are in there straight, because otherwise you solder everything and then you want to put this on there and it just doesn't fit. So we put this on there first, and actually what we can do is put in 1 or 2 of the extra screws from the kit into the front panel, into these spacers that we screwed from the other side of the PCB. And this will just help us make sure that the front panel is on there the right way and that it doesn't fall off when we flip it. So I will just do two of these. Oops. Okay. If we flip it now, actually this DC connector will still fall out like this. So make sure you put your finger on there, and if you put it back, still think about the long leg goes into the minus. So let's do this part first because it will fall out, and I'll just put my finger on it, and with some soldering magic I usually try to balance my tin on something. So I can put my finger here. You only have 2 hands. God gave us 2 hands, unfortunately, not 3. So we have to use this as a 3rd hand. And then I just place this tin, will just touch one of the legs of the DC connector, and my other hand will use the iron to melt this. We only need one leg to just stick a little bit like this. Now it's just a tiny bit of tin on there, and now I can let it go and it will stay in there. So this is all we need to secure it in place. And now we can just solder everything at the same time that we just put in. So we have the potentiometers here, 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 and here. We have these switches, they all have 4 legs. Here, here, and then one here. We have the DC connector, and we have 2 jacks over here. So let's solder this one by one, and let's start with this DC connector. And first we solder the leg that is not already soldered, because if we do this leg, it will fall out again, because this tin is keeping the whole thing in. So start with the other leg, just apply it generally because it's a big hole and a big leg. So let this dry for a second. If this one is dry, we can do the other one, because now we know it will stay in because it's holding by the other leg. So this DC connector is now soldered, and as you can see, we are not saving tin on this part because it needs to be just good connection, and that will make it work. So let's go to the potentiometers now. These have 3 legs that are actually active, so every potentiometer has 3 smaller legs next to each other. These are the active pins of the whole component. The other 2 big ones are only for stability and keeping it in place. So let's just solder all these 3 legs of all the potentiometers first. And also do not try to save tin on these components, because they will influence the sound, and everything just needs to be connected thoroughly, perfectly, and just use enough tin. So So 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, and 3 here. Okay, 6 times 3. So if you've done that, you can flip your board and just turn every potentiometer from one side to the other to check if it's actually not touching the sides of the hole. You will feel some resistance in your turn if it's actually not straight. And in my case, they're all straight. So now we can just solder these bigger legs right away. And by doing this now, we will not forget it later. So let's just do it right away. This also will use quite some tin, and you don't have to fill the holes all the way, but it's good to solder this for stability in the potentiometers later. Like this and this. Okay. So the potentiometers are soldered all the way, and let's do the switches next. They are here, 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 and here. Every switch has 4 legs, and we just solder all the legs like normal legs. Like this. Yes. So 5 switches, each have 4 legs, and they're all soldered now. So I'll show you. This is what we just did. And next up is these jacks, the only pins that are not soldered yet, as you can see. And let's just do it. We can also just solder them, you don't have to check. Because if the front panel fits on there, you know it's straight. So just solder all 3 legs of the jacks. And look at this. All pins and legs are actually soldered now on the whole PCB. So actually, yeah, it's almost done now, I think. The chip is also already in there, so what we just have to do now is maybe at this point we can test it, and you can just plug it in with the cable and try to listen to the output, and if you can hear this drone sound, so 4 oscillators working at the same time, you know you did it right. And if you did it right, then we can move on to the final assembly of the whole instrument, because you don't want to screw everything in, test it, and then notice that it's not working. We did this many times and we don't want to do this.
Yes.
It wastes your time. So I'm not gonna test it, but you will have to test it at this point.
Yeah.
And then the rest is just finishing all the screws, putting the knobs on there, and putting the nuts on the jacks. So let's start with the last 2 screws. They will go into the corners that we didn't screw yet. So like this. Oops. And this.
What's also good to know, if the front panel is on there, to test the potentiometers, that they go a little bit all the same, but not one is very heavy. In that case, then the potentiometer is maybe a little bit bent, and then it's can hit something. So this is all good. Make sure it's really good. Yeah. Otherwise, your potentiometer is maybe a little bit on the side in there.
Yeah. Yeah, you can also see it from here and here. Check if they're straight and not
yes.
like this or like this,
Yes.
because it will have some resistance with the side and it will not feel nice when you're playing it. So we have all 4 screws in here. Then we have 2 jack nuts or rings or whatever you want to call it that will fit onto the jacks, the audio output and the storm out, and they should fit on there like normal. And sometimes you have to fidget a little bit with it like this. And we actually have a tool, but normal people do not have this tool to tighten the jacks. You can just do it with hand. If you are pleased with that, you can use this, but try not to scratch the PCB. Just add a little bit of extra tightness so it doesn't just fall off when you're playing it or shaking it or traveling with it. So like this, these 2 done. And then the last step, well actually almost the last step, are the knobs. And we have 4 big knobs and we also have 2 small knobs that are over here. And the 4 big knobs will go onto these 4 knobs, potentiometers, and the 2 small ones go here. And these and this one is the LFO, so the LFOs will get the small potentiometers, and I mean knobs. And let's start with the big ones. Turn all the potentiometers all the way to the left, so anti-clockwise, and until you feel that it doesn't go any further. And then all knobs have this line on there, and make sure this line is pointing in this, I don't know what angle it is actually, it's like 45 degrees angle or something. So like this, just do it like this. And if it's right, you can just push it down until it clicks, and then you have your first knob on there. And this will be the same for all 4 knobs. So let's do it 3 more times. It looks best if they're all sort of similarly pointing in the same direction. So as long as you are happy with the end result, it's good. So like this, and now we have 4 big knobs for the 4 voices of the drone. And then we have 2 smaller knobs for the LFOs. Also turn the potentiometers all the way anti-clockwise. And these smaller knobs don't have a stripe, but they have a small dot or a circle. And just generally point this circle in the same direction as this line is, so like this. If it's all the way turned to the left, it should be pointing like this. And do it again for the other one. This one also sometimes clicks, sometimes you just push it down until it's just like 1 millimeter above the PCB. And now we have the LFO knobs on there also. Yay! Well, the very last step is the feet, rubber feet.
Shaving a little bit.
Yeah, oh yeah, also shaving the bottom a little bit because it's standing like this right on the PCB. And if there's something sticking out, if you didn't cut some legs short enough, just make sure you cut everything that's sticking out more than like 0.5 millimeter. So for example, the potentiometers big legs, we will just cut them off. They will shoot everywhere. So also the DC connector has 2 legs that are very high. We also cut them short, so it will not cause some short circuit if you put it on something metal, for example. This will ruin the PCB. So still this is a little bit too low, so we put some feet under there to make it stand up from the ground a little bit, so it will be safe for all use. And we have 8, but we're gonna make 4 out of them by putting one on top of the other. This is groundbreaking technology.
Extra long.
Extra long legs. So we can make 4 extra long legs out of 8 normal legs. The glue is very, very, very good, so it will not let go after you make this. The bigger ones. So you have 4 like this. And then just put them in every corner. 1. Here we can just put it right next to the screw, and here we can just try to put it a little bit between this potentiometer and the connector. And here also you can try to put it a little bit here. So now actually it's finished.
Woo!
Woohoo!
Nice.
So this is your end product.
Looks really nice.
It does.
Good job. Good job. What's good to know is this device has 2 outputs. This output you will hear if you put this one, and this output you will hear constantly like a kind of drone. It works on 9-volt center positive, so you can just do a block battery of 9-volt, or you get a power adapter center positive, so plus center. Yes, and it's basically an analog circuit with a kind of drone, but it's also a lot of modulation because of the factorals. So for education purpose, you also learn how factorals work and the basics of this with the LDR and the LED, the modulation of this device. If you want to use this one musical, I recommend to use it, for example, in a delay or in a guitar pedal, or just like this is also good. But then you can really go deep in it. And if you want to, for example, modulate this oscillator, you push the button here, you hold the button, and then you hear the modulation from the LFOs over here. Yeah. Thank you, Evie, for this introduction and the long steps. Yeah, but it's important that people know what they make. Also, thank you for if you're buying this kit or you're making this at a school or somewhere at the world. Yes. For more information, go to our website errorinstruments.com, and otherwise keep contact with Instagram or Facebook or something like this. Thank you. If you want to see this thing in use, like what kind of sound it makes and this kind of things, there we're gonna make a different video of that. Yeah. So if you're watching all hour and you're waiting for that point, I'm sorry, I have to disappoint you. Just watch the next video. Okay. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye bye.